The myth of if you don't have a full grasp of your lines, you will be therefore better placed to deliver them with spontaneity. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Whoever snuck that into the language is just another rationalization for not doing any work.
Well, here we are. 20 years since we all did the play Blue Orange together.
For those who don't know it, Blue Orange was written by
Joe Pennell.
and directed by,
Roger Michell.
starring.
Do you want to... Bill Nye, you may have heard of him.
Bill Nye.
It didn't sound like a great night out. When you described it to people, you say, so what are you doing? You say, I'm doing this play at the National Theatre. And they say, what's it about? And you say, it was about mental health and the situation between two white psychiatrists and a black patient. And, it didn't sound like a great night out.
No.
But in fact, it was, I remember standing in the wings on the first night thinking, why am I here? This must never, ever be allowed to happen again, which I do on every play, thinking I could be on a film set with somebody bringing me a Frappuccino. And then by the interval, everything you said was funny.
I'll never forget first day of rehearsals when we sat down for rehearsals and talked with Roger Michell and Joe for a bit for the morning, avoiding acting. And then they said, should we start? And you said, yeah, I'll start with Act 2. And he just started...
It was terrifying.
It was with no script. You just started...
You knew the lines.
You knew everything.
You had cheated. You'd broken the cardinal rule
yeah.
of rehearsal.
I know. Normally you're supposed to hold the book for 3 days and pretend you don't know them, because otherwise everybody hates you. But no, I remember phoning the director. It just shows you how deep the taboo about learning lines is. I phoned the director and said, is it okay if I learn the lines? And he was like, I haven't rehearsed an actor with a book in his hand for 10 years. Please learn the lines, But you did feel like you were cheating. It was like you'd done
I
something.
didn't get that memo.
We didn't have that.
No, well, obviously not.
Yeah.
Which became apparent
carrying
very
the book.
early on.
Yeah, carrying the book.
There was a lot of lines, though.
I mean, the director, I remember saying once that it was like watching circuit training, because we pumped it out, like, and it was not like a play, was it? It was not like going to the theatre somehow. It was a different kind of vibe.
It was just an argument, wasn't it? It was just this argument that kept seesawing.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it was this young man, and is he or isn't he, and psychosis. And it opened up all of these ideas about institutionalized racism and class and medical malpractice. But it was so well written and so cool, the lines.
And like you say, funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and really funny.
Really funny.
Really, really
And
funny.
you turned into Nosferatu pretty much every night. And you smelt me,
I did smell you.
which was one of the weirdest things to be smelt by
Yeah,
you.
I nicked it from Anthony Hopkins, because he used to smell everybody. I did a play here called Pravda, and he would go out to people. It was really offensive. He'd go out to people and go...
You used to do that. but
And
it
I
was
used to
more-
do it
It was
to you.
more than that. It was...
And I used to, because it was in the round, when I smelt you on both sides of your face, I could see all the people behind you, and they were all like, oh,
I had
is
to
he
take-
really smelling him?
It was it was
Yeah.
a very strange moment each night. Yeah, it was, but it was brilliant. I remember the first night when we got through that first night, and it was so out-of-body experience. The whole thing was just, because it was, we used to walk to a square stage
Yeah,
across a gangplank, like we were going to the gallows.
sure.
And it would rise. It was sort of like, it synchronized with this jazzy kind of music as we walked on.
Well, it was like 10 seconds of music. Ba-ba-da-ba, ba-ba-da-dee, boo-ba-da-da-bang.
That's it.
And then we come on, and it's like 10 minutes of us going at it before Bill comes on. And so the music starts, bum-ba-da-bum, boom-ba-dee-boo. Andy goes to me, what's my line after? God.
The disappointment. Your face is just like, so fucking unprofessional.
I know this is going to collapse at some point. I don't know when.
Yeah, just going, why would you do that? Why would you even voice that? It was brilliant.
I remember the audience reaction, That was so special, I think, from the first preview, because you don't know what something's like in isolation.
No.
You know, you're rehearsing, you send it out. I mean, we all thought that it was strong, you know, but you send it out and the audience reaction, that first preview,
Yeah.
it's just remarkable.
It was incredible.
Feeling.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like it. I remember also Roger saying, on the very first day of rehearsals, I think, he said, he made this statement, which was that we're not going to have any moments. Everything will be examined with equal, you know, curiosity and commitment. So, and we had a water cooler. Do you remember obviously, you remember everything. I remember anyway. But there was a water cooler. And I remember him saying, if you choose to go to the water cooler and get yourself a drink, that's as important as anything. You know, that the action doesn't stop while you get a drink. It was quite. I mean, maybe that for me that was quite a big deal, that everything had equal value.
Had you guys met before?
No, we'd
doing the
never
show?
met before. He had no idea who I was, which was refreshing.
This is before Google, though.
This
That's
was
true.
You know, so you had to ask people.
True, I know.
What you been in?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What would I have seen you
What
in?
would I have seen you in?
Yeah.
But we became
warm-up
like what happens when you know, do something like this. We became the best of mates, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we had to have each other's back on this show like nothing else, because they asked us to go so quickly.
Yeah.
There was a source of attack that Roger identified very quickly, that gave it this kind of amazing energy.
Yeah. Well, he said to you that if it wasn't a show unless your shirt changed colour. Do you remember?
That's true. I did. I pumped some truth one
pumped some
afternoon.
truth,
I decided I'd care a bit, and
Yeah.
when I took my jacket off in the second act, when I'm being accused of racism and all kinds of other stuff, my linen blue shirt was drenched,
Turned to navy.
turned to navy, and he said, "That's what we want every night."
Yeah.
What happened with with your ring the night that you were bleeding all over the stage?
Oh yeah.
Why would you bring that up?
Yeah, exactly. What was that? That
would
was one of
you-
the weirdest theatrical
Yeah.
experiences of my life.
Just stop
seeing
it.
that go.
Yeah.
Don't do it on this. Can we cut this? I cut my finger.
You were trying to do. What were you trying to do?
I wasn't trying to do anything. I was acting. I was
I
in the
know,
middle of
but
acting.
okay, you were. That was in
It's a
the
very emotional
in the
moment,
spirit of
and for
the-
some reason, and I learnt a very valuable lesson, which is don't use a crappy ring that had a bit of a serrated edge. And I went, "What is wrong with you?" And it took the top of my finger off.
Oh wow, yeah.
And you became a fountain.
And I
Oh, right.
remember at one point I pointed at you, and this line of blood went across the front row of the stalls,
Yeah.
and all these women were just like, and it was Saturday night.
Yeah.
I think I said something about you being a junior lieutenant trying to get mentioned in dispatches.
You were like, your face when I walked on stage, and I was
What's he
acting.
doing?
I'd lost about a pint, and it was turned into a Jacobean drama. By the end, there was blood everywhere. And someone said there was an American woman in the front that got up and went, "Oh my God, does he do that every night?" Like this. Because it was crazy.
Weird. I remember the following morning, everyone went mental, and American producers calling up saying, "Can we take it?" You know, all that kind of thing happened. And I'm glad we get this opportunity, because it was a big thing for me. It was a huge thing for all of us, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
at
it
the time?
was.
And
It was.
you know,
And we drilled it, didn't we? Do you remember, when
Yeah.
we went to your place and
Yeah.
had sausages, and I taught you how to cook
you
sausages?
taught me how to cook sausages. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we would drill it, so it was this bigger
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
It was so exciting.
Yeah. It was so beautiful.
Something about the length of time, wasn't it? The sausages.
It was
No,
to
don't-
do with forking the
Oh,
sausage.
that's
You never
right.
listened
It's
to me.
the
He's this
fork,
weirdo who
but,
doesn't
yeah.
fork the sausage.
You're not supposed to fork the sausages.
Which means if you don't fork the sausage, you risk all kinds of shit happening in the pan.
But largely why we got into sausages, because we said we need to nail this down.
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
to the country, as they used to in the 60s, to get shit together, yeah. We went to the country
We got
and we
shit
got it together.
Got it together.
We got it together.
Well, largely because you learnt the whole thing anyway, and we had catch up.
Yeah.
It was basically your
I think I
benevolence.
sent a message to Roger, the director, saying, "Tell him I've learned." It was to frighten you.
Yeah.
And I said, "I hope they haven't got mobile phones." Yeah,
We had
no,
mobile
sorry.
phones.
I don't think I had a mobile
don't think
phone.
I had
Or if it did, it was very early in the whole
flip phone.
mobile thing.
phone.
Nokia.
So how did it all start? Should we start at the beginning?
Why not?
Bill,
How did I become an actor?
Yeah, tell me.
Well, I became an actor because I did a bit at school, and there was a drama priest called Father Richins. I was hand-reared by Jesuits, and he
That
was...
explains a lot.
Well, quite. We called him Little Richins, obviously. And he put me in plays because I was tall, which meant I didn't have to play girls. I was at an all-boys school, and I could remember stuff. But I never thought you could be an actor. But then I met a girl, and she said, you could be an actor. And she was the first girl who'd ever paid any attention to me. And she could have said astronaut, and I would have given it a shot. I figured we'd be together for the rest of our lives. I just finished being a Catholic. I named our unborn children. I should have carried papers to that effect. You know, if you're kind to this boy, you'll never get rid of him. Anyway, she fired me after about 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, she wrote the letter to a drama school, the Guildford School of Dance and Drama, which otherwise known as the Guildford School of Prance and Murmur, where I went for 2 years and didn't pay attention. But then I got a gig. That's how I came into show business.
Wow.
How about that?
Well,
what about you?
Yeah.
what about
Andy, what are you?
Well, mine's exactly the same, apart from the Jesuit
The
acting
same
coach.
girl? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My first production was, I think I played the Mock Turtle to Matthew Lane's Griffin, and it was a resounding success, I believe. And then I got dragged in to play in Oliver, the Artful Dodger.
Oh, well, that's obviously
And I went-
everything, yeah.
Well, and that was it was all right. And I got to act with the girls' school. We were we were a boys' school with it. So it is essentially the same story. And then the route was National Youth Theatre, local Amdram, National Youth Theatre, and then drama school.
Fantastic.
Which leaves you.
Yeah. I was just trying to think. Did the first play that I did, I think I was like 10. I had one line. It was, I'm ready when you are. Practiced that for years. It never quite went off, but it's tough when you've got one line, just because, it's a lot to pack into it. Then when I was about 13, I auditioned for Measure for Measure at school and played Angelo. And that actually set me off. I was there for the art.
That's never changed.
Yeah, but I did actually genuinely love the idea of, I think, just self-expression. I didn't have another way of really expressing myself. I was quite shy, I think, in some ways.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I really found like I could, I could express myself.
I think that's
somehow.
right. It was sort of lose it. It wasn't the acclaim or the applause. It was sort of losing yourself for moments. That's the bit that I kind of dug and still dig. I love it.
What was the first thing you did for money?
I was a wine waiter. I mean,
No.
acting. Oh right, yeah. Acting was Boston Kick-Out.
Oh, right, okay.
Independent. It wasn't much money because it was an independent English movie, and it was the first thing I did out of drama school with John Sim.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was amazing, and it was just great to get a gig.
What about on stage?
Stage, I can't remember if it was Sugar Sugar by Simon Bent.
Sugar at the Bush.
Yeah.
I saw that.
You came to that?
Yeah.
You didn't come to that. No one came
I
to
did
that.
see Sugar.
Did you really?
I did see Sugar at the Bush.
Simon Bent, brilliant writer.
How many other jobs did you do? You were a wine waiter?
I was a wine waiter. I used to work in Sally Lunn's bun shop in Bath.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very good buns. And I was a dishwasher.
Oh, nice.
And I struggle with my hair. Most.
we know about that.
We know
talked
about my hair struggles.
Yeah.
But it was pretty bad after 3 hours of working with detergent, and I used to come out.
Oh, right. Yeah. What did you do for money?
Silver service waiter at the Admirable Crichton
Wow.
Yeah.
for a while.
Very posh. How are you with new potatoes?
Easy. I mean, it was my specialty. They'd call me from the back.
Stop it.
They would.
You're like, whoa.
I've got some new potatoes over here. Come on, get him down here. But not much, actually.
What was your first money job for acting?
First money job was I did like in the very early days of like the BBC HBO co-productions. There was a film called Deadly Voyage that was shot in Ghana, and that was my first time, I think, doing anything.
Were you at drama school then? Because
It was actually in my year off, so I just finished at school.
Yeah.
And then I was going to start...
Between you went go to
Yeah,
drama,
then I was
right.
going to start drama school the following September.
Because everybody, when we were, everybody knew about this guy, Chiwetel Ejiofor, because of Amistad, and
Because of Amistad,
because everyone was just going, this kid was still at drama school and he got pulled out of jail. So it was, you were this sort of mythological figure anyway before I met you.
Yeah, that was a wild time. I was at drama school, at Lambda, and they were auditioning for Amistad, and I went along. And technically, you weren't supposed to audition whilst you were at drama school, but because it was Spielberg, they had made this exception.
Oh, the Spielberg clause.
Yeah, exactly. They put in a little Spielberg clause that says, that you can go because it essentially be good practice for everybody to see how these things, But I got the part, and it was amazing.
Amazing.
And so then I left drama school and went off to shoot the film. And so, within the space of the first, few months at drama school, I had started at drama school, was really excited about that. And by the end of that term, I was in Los Angeles making a film with Spielberg.
How did you feel going into that job?
I felt very confident, just in the way that I think you can when you're sort of 19 and things happen and you feel like this is how it happens, I suppose. You know what I mean? You only later, when you look back on things, you think how remarkable something is, how unlikely, almost impossible something is. But in the moment, you think, I guess I just, I'll just apply some of my first term at drama school to this Spielberg movie then,
My 3 weeks at drama school, I think it's going to work really well.
I do a little Alexander technique and get on with the scene, And,
Learn your lines.
it was amazing, looking back on it, incredible.
And Bill, come on.
My first job for money was at the Watermill Theatre in Newbury. I played a bodyguard. Calm down. They put me in a singlet, which is not...
What's a singlet?
A singlet is a vest. It's a vest.
Just a vest?
Just a vest. And I'm not built for vests, strictly speaking, but I had a nightstick, which I made myself. I carved it in the workshop, and I painted it black.
Why?
Because I was told to. And the first day of rehearsals, there was a wonderful woman called Marcella Markham, who was a New York actress who'd come to England because her husband had been blacklisted by the McCarthy. And she came in wearing a fur coat, high heels, and very big sunglasses, so you couldn't see her eyes. And I figured that's an actress, that's what actresses are like. Yeah. And she came in and sat down, and I had 6 lines in a Southern American accent. I remember looking into her sunglasses, and she didn't say her line back. And I was very, very nervous. I was like, unbearably nervous, and deeply self-conscious, and I had no confidence at all. And she looked up, and then she looked at the director, and I thought she was going to say, "What the," But in fact, she said, "Where did you get this kid? He's incredible." Wow. Because she saw me kind of standing. It was an act of kindness. And after that, I followed her everywhere.
Yeah.
So, was there a pivotal moment for you? Do you think?
Blue Orange was on stage the thing that changed my life and the way that I viewed acting, and it changed all of our lives. I mean, it opened us up. Richard Curtis saw the show, and quite lazy casting, I would say, put us all in, a movie of his, and that was a big deal for all of us. And also just the reaction from people. I remember Dustin Hoffman coming to the National Bar, and I just, it was amazing. I was calling my mum, Dustin Hoffman's been to see it. And then his daughter came. He loved the show so much, his daughter took us out when we were in the West End. And it was just little moments like that of feeling part of this sort of community and being really committed to something and loving the subject matter and the way it was delivered. But yeah, I think This Life was huge for me. Mm. That was the thing that suddenly... There was a script flying around the industry and everybody was saying, oh, it's great, it was really well written. And this was before phones. And I remember being at another casting for something and the casting director said, oh, your agent's on the call, and I got the gig. And I remember just going, thanks very much, I'm off to do that job, and just being in something that was, quite, new and exciting about young people. And it was quite experimental in as much as, the cameras were on us all the time, quite documentary style, when that wasn't known what it was. And also working with lots of other actors who didn't have that much experience was I sort of cut my teeth on that. So, yeah, I think massively important. And pivotal moments, Bill?
I suppose when I met David Hare, that was a pivotal moment because I've worked with David Hare all my life, and he is a great man and a great writer, and I got more beyond lucky when I met him. Ken Campbell, the man who never rehearsed, he would say, "You're all grown men. What's the matter with you? Rehearsal. Tell me a joke." But because you didn't rehearse, I was kind of liberated by that. So that was quite a pivotal thing. One of the things that I wish people had told, there are about 3 things that people, there's many things, but 3 of them are things I wish someone had said to me before, I wish I'd known. One is that it was okay to be frightened. 2 was that drugs are the enemy of art. And 3, pay your taxes, moron. Those are 3 things that I would have benefited from. And the other thing was just realizing that I could do stuff even while my head was attacking me and telling me and inventing me as somebody who couldn't. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
I just remember you saying something that I took with me for a long time and have taken into like doing plays since that point, was you talked a lot about, or at least on occasion about, that sort of invisible line between being off stage and being on stage. And I really remember that trying to make that line disappear, basically, so that you walk on the stage and it's not like, and now I am presenting something. It's like you just walk on the stage and you just sort of carry the same energy, the same thought into performance, which I think is...
Brilliant.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was doing The Seagull here with Judi Dench and lots of other great actors, and I was very, very nervous. And I remember I would sort of be on my best behaviour. I'd walk on stage and be on my best behaviour. I'd sort of stand up straight. You know, like, why are you standing up straight? Did everybody stand up straight in 1893? You know, and I'd speak slightly differently, and and I'd go, why are you talking funny? You know, and it's like when people do Shakespeare, they're all standing rather well, you know, or something, and they've got great hair and they're doing whatever they, you know, and that kind of thing. And I used to be scratching my head in the wings, and I'd think, and then I'd stop scratching my head, and I'd go, right, okay, you know, and then I'd think, why are you stopping scratching your head? Scratch your head. So I'd walk on scratching my head, which wasn't particularly radical, but it got me through. It got me from there to there, you know. Have you had other pivotal moments, George?
Well, I mean, this play, Blue Orange, was massive for me because I think it's continuing relevance, you know, mental health. And for a young black guy, the story of how the society can play all these different dynamics and how they have psychological repercussions. It's something that I think was ahead of its time as well, is a conversation that is still very necessary and still happening, and being at the forefront of something like that was really important, and then set a tone for some of the things that I wanted to try and do and trying to achieve. And so just people coming to see the show, you know, and I hadn't had even though I had done Amistad, I hadn't really thought of myself moving into like film acting until Dirty Pretty Things. And that was, part of that was as a direct result of Stephen Frears coming to see Blue Orange. And so for all of those reasons, it was an incredible time. Something I, often reflect back on as a really important seminal moment for me in my life, my attitude towards this profession as well. There is something about being on stage, I think, when you're in a play that is working, and feeling the audience on a journey with you, and really feeling kind of connected to the experience. I think it connects you back to this sort of the history of storytelling, of communities gathered around to hear stories and talk to each other about the issues of their time. And I think for me, there's something that is so unique and powerful about that. And I think in those moments, I've sometimes felt like, wow, this is exactly everything that I hoped for. Like I hoped to, when I fell in love with this profession, and these were the moments that I wanted, that I dreamt of.
I suppose a pinch me moment, I remember I opened a play in New York, And I'd been so alarmed and scared for months because I agreed to do the job. And I used to wake up every morning thinking, why did I do this? I'm going to open a play on Broadway. You know, and it was just like such a, you know. And then the previews were surreal. And then the opening night was like me looking into my colleagues' eyes and just reading their minds. And they were looking at me thinking, well, he's the senior member of the company. How come he's falling apart? Every time he speaks, it's bullshit. You know, that experience for like 2.5 hours. And then then somebody told me the reviews were okay, so we were sort of safe. And we'd sold out anyway because of Julianne Moore was in it, which was a wonderful thing. And then the next night, I had a driver called Andrew, and he in a big, you know, one of those big SUVs, because in America they give you a driver for the theatre, which is like, on here in England you get the bus, you know what I mean? But there they give you a driver. And he was called Andrew. He was from Colombia, and I was somewhere between the M&M store on the way home. We'd always stop at the M&M shop, and I'd get a sack of M&Ms. And then I was halfway to the car, and I opened the door of the car, and Barry White, who I had no previous relationship with, Barry. I don't know how I'd missed Barry, but anyway, was doing Never Ever Gonna Give It Up. And I had this, and I had this revelation, all the fear in my head dismantled, and I realized we'd opened and it was okay, and I could stop being scared now. And I got in the car and I said, and I had a lot of chocolate, let's face it, I had a lot of chocolate. And I remember saying to Andrew, I said, Andrew, turn that fucker up. And he turned it up, and he went, yes, boss. He used to call me boss, which is always satisfying. And he turned it up, and then I said, let's go to Brooklyn for dessert, because I had a big sugar thing going on at the time. And he put the wheel between, and I had my arms in the air, and like this, to Barry. And he put his arms in the air, he had the wheel between his knees. And I was inhaling M&Ms.
Your driver was driving without hands.
Yeah, through New York City, over Brooklyn Bridge. And I knew when and I was perfectly suspended in the world, you know what I mean? Everything, it was a moment of pure ecstasy. I'm not great at happiness, but I'm quite good at relief, you know what I mean? And it was just, I knew when I took my hands down that it was over. So I kept them up there for quite a long time. I mean, does that count as pinch me?
Yeah, totally. Well, because I was going to say the same thing, is that I don't think it's pinch me, it's just general relief is my experience. I don't think I've ever had a moment during a play when I've gone, oh, this is going pretty well. And if I do, I generally forget my line directly afterwards. And I remember Stuart Lang, who I had to kiss 76 times in a Jonathan Harvey play. And we were rolling, and it was done quite well, and we were going around. We'd done all the big spots, Darlington and a few other places, and we came back into London to finish the run, and he looked at me, and he just knew, you know the feeling when you know the other actor is without words, and it was just at the moment when I just thought, this is going quite well, you know, and he dug me, he pulled me out of that moment that probably lasted only 3 seconds, but it felt like, you know.
Of you feeling in the moment that something was...
No, I just didn't forgot my lines.
Oh, you forgot your lines, right.
Oh, no. It went from that moment of this is going incredibly well into, oh, God.
What do I say?
What do I say? Mm-hmm. And he just knew. He just looked, and he'd forgotten. And I could see his brain going, OK, I know my line, but what is his line? And how am I going to get, you know, and he pulled me out of it. I'll forever... thank him. Whenever I see him, I go, thank you.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I say to him. But, you know, the pinch me moment, I had a sort of similar thing. I suppose but it wasn't theatre related. It was when I did the Walking Dead, and we'd been to Comic-Con, and we'd done this. It has been frightening, because I'd been asked to do a sort of iconic American role in this with Frank Darabont and this wonderful kind of group of people making it. And they'd assembled the trailer, and there were 5,000, you know, fans of the comic book that it was based on. And we had to play this trailer, and I couldn't, I was next door, and then it was received really well. And I remember my knees going, because I was so relieved when they when I heard this sort of roar. But it wasn't anything euphoric. It was just complete relief, like I hadn't messed up everybody's careers. You know.
Yeah.
I wish it were more than that, but that's the truth.
No, do me.
Yeah.
Totally. I definitely have internal dialogues on stage. I was just thinking, as you were saying, about you know, when you're thinking whether it's going well or badly or whatever, I have no filter with that in my head, especially if the plays like run in.
Yeah.
You know, I can drift off into very strange places.
Intrusive thoughts. That
I
just
mean,
kind of
so many, you know. I remember doing a play and I was trying to work out, because I thought I'd seen somebody in the audience, but I wasn't expecting them to be in that night. So I was suddenly thinking, but then if they're in this night and they've got those tickets, then my other friend who I was expecting to be in that night, then maybe he didn't get in. And so then I was looking around for like the other person to see if they'd been, you know, they'd got into the house seats, you know, blah, blah, blah. All the while, I'm strangling Desdemona.
That's
you know,
amazing.
so it's like,
That's amazing.
you know, I can drift into these sort of very peculiar places.
But I love that thing, that, you know, that you have that part of your brain that is listening there as well as this.
Well, you have to be self-conscious, because otherwise you can't go to work. So, you know, it's like a woman came up to me in the street a while back and said, I saw you in a play and I really liked it. And I said, thanks very much. She said, I'm trying to be an actress. I said, how's that going? She said, well, my drama teacher's a little angry with me currently. And I was like, really? You know? And I said, why? She said, well, you know, because of the feelings. I said, the feelings? She said, yeah, you know, the feelings. I was like, what feelings would they be? She said, well, you know, he thinks that I'm not feeling stuff. I said, well, you saw me in a play. She said, yeah. I said, you enjoyed it? She said, I thought it was great. I said, well, I can sort of almost guarantee, I don't know when you saw it, but I can guarantee I'm not feeling anything. I'm at work. You know what I mean? I've got quite a lot on my plate. I've got 2.5 hours. I've got to, you know, make love to a woman, eat chili con carne, smoke cigarettes, hit the doorknob when on that lighting change, otherwise we're buggered, you know, do all these things. I mean, it might be occasionally, I might get, you know, something might be triggered, but I'm busy, you know what I mean? But I do know, I mean, I've walked out on this stage, I remember. The house seats are always a real, because you know where they are. And it's always going to be somebody scarily famous. And I've walked out and seen David Bowie and his wife was sat there. I know that was all I remember. I walked straight out and looked straight into his eyes, because you know where the house seats are. And you're not supposed to look at the house seats. You say to us, don't look at the house seats, because it will be somebody famous and scary. But anyway, then for the rest of the show, it's all about the fact that David Bowie is watching me be not very good, you know. When I was younger, there was a particular strain of bullshit about acting, which was that had you been in the theatre at all, you were spoiled as a result for film acting. That it was two different things, and that you would be imprisoned with larger gestures and, you know, and a kind of theatrical way of speaking, or, you know, complete nonsense. I think it's gone away, but not entirely. And it's just not true, you know. I mean, and often Hollywood was built by theatre people on the run from the Nazis, you know, largely in the 30s. And great film acting has been done by great theatre actors, you know, and vice versa, you know. So it's like, it's just something that I would like to explode as a myth.
You also said that thing, I remember saying less is more, and you went, no, 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 no.
More is more.
More is more. And I remember that, because I remember you, and another one is get your hands over your head as quickly as possible when you walk on set.
Yeah.
Get them up.
Yeah.
Get them up.
Yeah. Well, I used to be so, I only did anything, because I spent years standing on stage, having conversations with myself, saying, move your hand, put it in your pocket. I can't move my hand. Move over there. I can't go over there. Just walk there. I can't walk. I'd be like that. I was completely paralyzed. And then I worked out, and I worked out in a rehearsal thing. If you did something, anything, if you did that or that, quick, just something, anything that was better than standing there like that, then you would feel less, you'd feel terrible for less time.
Any other myths that you want to bust, Bill?
Myths. Well, we've done feeling it. The myth of if you don't have a full grasp of your lines, you will be, therefore, better placed to deliver them with spontaneity. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Whoever snuck that into the language is just another rationalization for not doing any work.
Yeah.
And if you don't do your lines, then when does the work, you know, like if an actor comes on and says, can I get some sides, please? You know you're in trouble, because the sides meaning little bits of the script that they get for that day's scenes. And you think, well, when did the work take place then? When is it going to happen now? You're going to be doing it now? while we're sort of working, you're going to be doing that now. Anybody got any?
I don't know. I don't think I've got. Let me have a think.
I think it's all about. I mean, for me, it's always that. It's corpsing. I mean, it's that. There's only one time that I feel like I corpsed. That I could say it was a proper, you know, and that was Othello with Ewan McGregor, and it was the final act. Very intense, you know. Iago's been brought in. There's people, you know, everybody's been killed, and you know, it's a very gruesome ending to the play. And we had these sort of slate kind of cobbled floors, and at a certain point, I grabbed a sword, and I'm supposed to go and stab Ewan. And what happens is, as I'm running towards him across the stage, I drop the sword a little bit. It gets stuck in one of the slate cobbles, and it flicks up, and it hits him across the codpiece.
Well, that'll do.
To which somebody in the audience in the front row just says, "Ooh." And it's the only time that I've ever I turned away. I just turned slightly away, and I just could feel my shoulders going. And you know,
it's like the funniest thing that ever happened, isn't it? It's like corpsing is like, and it's not funny. I mean, it's kind of funny, you know what I mean? But it's like, I did Pravda by David Hare and Howard Brenton, and with Anthony Hopkins. And Anthony Hopkins, there was a bit where he dressed in a kimono. Give me a break. He was in a kimono with a big bamboo pole performing a fictional martial art. And there was a guy in the front row of the Olivier who'd come to the theatre in shorts. You feel me? Mm-hmm. And he was in the front row. And if you want to, in the Olivier, while the play's going on, you can kick your legs out and cross your ankles on the stage in front of Anthony Hopkins with a big bamboo, if you want. You can do that if you wish. And this guy did. You could see right up his shorts as well. Anyway, he crossed his ankles in front of Sir Anthony, who had a 6-foot bamboo pole. So Anthony was like raging, you know, with this guy with his feet up. So he brought the bamboo cane down, right, just within a half inch of the guy's head. And then the guy's legs retreated into his torso. It was like, you know.
Wow.
And it was lit, so the audience could see everything that was happening. So the audience had seen it all. And it went, you know, completely quiet. And it was like being in heaven. It was like theatrical heaven, because my next line was, "People are beginning to worry about you, boss." That was my next line. So it was like, and I didn't want to say the line because things were never going to be this good again. You know what I mean? Once you said the line, it would be quite good, but and it did. It went off like a bomb, you know.
Amazing.
Because they howled with relief, apart from anything else, because Anthony looked mental.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know. God, there's Nick Bagnall, when we were doing, Nick Bagnall, who's now a very fine director, we were doing a play in Darlington to about 6 people. And, you know, after 3, they thought it was a musical. It wasn't a musical. It was a play about AIDS. And then Nick was playing a rent boy, and he had quite a good speech in the middle of the play, and he just went quiet for about 5 minutes. And everybody was just like, he was on his own, and everybody was looking in the wings and just going, "Oh, God, what's going on? Is he having a breakdown? It's been a long tour," all these things. And he came off, and he eventually found his words and walked off stage, and he looked at me, gave a wink, and he went, "Always treat your audience with contempt." I just thought, this is so funny. It's just like, what are you on about?
So you don't teach that.
They don't teach that.
They don't teach that.
You've got to learn.
School. You won't get that, you know.
Well, at drama school, they had a course at Goldsmiths, a film course, and I was chosen, along with a girl from our year, to do a little film. And I'd just been reading the Michael Caine Guide to Acting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and...
Don't blink.
Exactly. And I did this 15-minute, you know, short film, and then got called into the principal's office, and they were really seriously concerned about my well-being, because I'd spent 15 minutes. They said, "Are you okay? Are you a bit overwhelmed by, you know, what's happening?" And I just hadn't blinked
Oh,
for
sorry.
15 minutes, and I was bleeding. My eyes were bleeding. It was the most embarrassing thing. Yeah. So there we go for sort of, and you know, people are always asking, what advice would you give younger actors? You know, don't listen to older actors is what I would start with.
Demystify the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something that there's too much sort of mystery about it all, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I think it is always a thing of just whatever works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever works, whatever communicates, whatever's honest,
it.
whatever you feel is right. You know,
I wish they told me
those-
that at drama school.
Trust those instincts.
Yeah, I think
you know.
that's exactly right, because all of the different departments are sort of vying for your attention.
Yeah.
And they all sort of, but you actually, you know, and then you work with brilliant people and you just go, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that seemed,
We often see people that are coming straight out of drama school on a film set, say, and you watch them and they're debriefing from everything they've been told, because none of that stuff's going to work, because there's no time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they see actors, you know, shoot the breeze and then go on and, you know, get laughs or break hearts or do whatever they're supposed to, then go back and shoot the breeze. You know, it's not like, or, you know, it's nothing that they've been prepared for.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to debrief from your so-called training.
that's right. I wish someone said, don't trust your instincts more.
Yeah.
It took me 10 years I was so concerned about what that director said or this, you know, and actually you realise, you know, everybody's, you know.
Yeah, and the taboo about it being frightening, just generally it's considered to be bad form. It's sort of, you know, it's like, you know, to perform, you know, to whatever this is, 1,000 people,
Yeah.
and be the only person to speak. I mean, you know, that's alarming in my view. I mean, opening plays particularly.
Without a doubt.
You know.
I mean, the last play that I did, what was it? Toby Jones. We were lying down, and he said, "There's still time." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We can be on the 5:15 to Bruges and have steak and frites by 7:30. We can do this,
Yeah.
you know." And that's how profound that feeling is when you
Yeah.
have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah.
The first night.
Well, I can remember standing behind the set with Anthony Hopkins, who I figured had it down. You know, when I was a young man, I figured Anthony Hopkins probably,
Yeah.
you know, he's probably, you know, relaxed. And he in the dark, and I couldn't see his face. We were in the dark. We were just about to go on for the opening night. And he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Well, I'm shitting myself." He said, "So am I."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, doesn't it get any better?" He said, "No, it gets fucking worse."
Yeah. It's good to hear.
It's great. It
It's
meant a great
relief.
deal to me. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
relief.
Because it's the truth, you know.
Yeah.
I don't, you know. And if anybody isn't frightened, it makes me very uneasy. You know, I don't really want to work with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're obviously insane or something, or they don't know that they should be. You know what I mean? They don't know what's at stake, or they don't know how hard it is, or something. I don't know.
And what about this? What about an empty space? You know, look how beautiful this is, but also
Yeah.
You know.
What it's missing.
what it's missing as
Yeah.
well. Just that reverb, you know.
Yeah. There isn't anything like it, is there?
I think it's when it's good, it feels like you're all in the same head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like everybody's in the same headspace. Everybody's listening and reacting the same way if a play's beautiful. I mean, I saw Christmas Carol with Reese, and I remember it was so beautifully done, and he was marvelous in it, but it was that whole feeling of everybody was breathing and at the same time. And it could only exist in that space because of the music as well, and because of the singing and the way that they positioned the actors. It was just you know, and there are several sort of productions that I remember, I recall, and that have been nothing. They can't equate. They don't exist in any other format.
I've seen shows here like that. When I was, you know, growing up, I remember coming to the National and seeing Paul Schofield
Oh, yeah.
do John Gabriel Borkman.
Yeah.
I remember just being, as a part of the audience, just kind of blown away and just really excited, thrilled about the prospect of maybe being on the other side of all of that and being on the stage, you know.
It's been a tough, weird year. It's been strange. I've been, you know, isolating on my own this is a bit of a shock, frankly. And the theatre has been hit as hard as anything. It'll be great when it's you know, allowed back. I think they're having audiences in September in New York, I think.
I think they're rehearsing. There are people rehearsing in this space as we speak. So that's heartening, and
Yeah.
and they're going to hopefully in the next couple of months be playing to possibly half houses, which is amazing. And
Yeah, I'm sure the theatre will come roaring back. You know, I, for one, am really excited to see shows, to get out there, to get engaged, to be with the community, people.
Yeah.
You know, I have really missed it, and it's made it very, very, very difficult. I think in any other period, you know, there was always a kind of sense of societal camaraderie, you know, but in this, of course, that's been taken away as well, and that's been cruel, painful.
And also, you can say things in the theatre that you can't, or they won't always pay for you to allow you to say on film. You know what I mean? You are at liberty to discuss things at length.
yeah,
And to say stuff that's contentious
yeah,
and subjects that aren't of particular interest to, you know, film producers, or, you know, the commercial imperatives aren't the same, you know. So it's a vital, I mean, this sounds like a cliche, and it is a cliche, but, you know, it's a vital resource. I mean, like vital, like should be on the national health,
I
which
agree.
kind of is on the national
Well, it
health,
is.
but not to the degree I wish.
And also I've been thinking in this time, this year and a bit, where everything's been on pause, I've been thinking about if I were an actor, a young actor at drama school, just coming out, and just thinking about how important theatre is.
For getting yourself out there.
Getting started.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
You know, and also vital experience, and, you know, and the theatrical community, because there is one, you know, isn't like filming. You know, if someone, it's hand to mouth, and it's a tough, you know, hard working part of our job. So it was just, it was a shocking and sort of upsetting reminder that, you know, that this needs to come back, and I agree with you. I think people can't wait to be back in the audience.
And I can't wait to hear the in theatre reflections of this year.
Yeah.
You know, you know, of every, you know, personal stories, reflections on government, you know, reflections on international communities, of what's happened and how it's happened and what the future looks like. And I think that the theatre is going to have a huge amount to say about all of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. You know. Well, there we are.
This is it.
20 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a joy, guys.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.